Hey, thanks for joining us here on Iron Pros again for one of our titanium editions of Construction Tech Talk. We call them that because we're joined by our illustrious partners. And here today with us, we've got Steve Warfel, who's the CEO of Insite Software. How's your day going today, sir?
Very good, very good.
Well, that's good to hear. We're going to delve into Insight Solution, which is of interest to anyone who is involved with 3D machine control and earth moving for both takeoffs and also managing the models. Sit tight. So, Steve, we got to meet a little while ago at ConExpo ConAg, and you were able to take me to school a little bit on that occasion. But what I'd like to do now is help folks understand a little bit more granularly what it is that the Insight Elevation Pro product does, and why they might look at it instead of some other things.
So Elevation Pro actually is a takeoff tool for site contractors to do all their cut and fill quantities, in addition to their subgrade box outs, curbing, pretty much anything that you would want to take off on a grading project. And then, of course, if you're awarded the project, it gives you the ability to generate a GPS machine control model to all the manufacturers out there. To the second part of your question about how we got here, we've been doing this for a long time. Um, our company was founded, I'm almost reluctant to say this, in 1988. It sounds, but and what really makes Elevation Pro exciting was that we had a previous product out there for a long period of time. About 5 years ago, we recognized that there was a lot of advances in technology, and sometimes, um, somebody gave me a good analogy when we were out in Vegas. They said sometimes you just have to blow up a hotel and put up a brand new one. And I think that's really like a great analogy. We just said, what if we started over? Um, and so Elevation Pro was, designed to be easy to use, to have all kinds of capabilities that just weren't technically possible before. And so that's why it's a new offering.
One thing that jumps out at me a lot of times, a software company will tell me, well, our product is easier to use than other products. But I don't see anybody out there saying, hey, our software is hard to use. What are some of the objective things that you can point to that would kind of back that up and make it real?
Yeah, so we'll start out with like one of the foundations of the product is that it is pretty common for contractors to start out by using a lot of different documents. You might have PDF files with multiple pages, multiple files. You might have a CAD file if you're lucky. You might have a drone topo data. You might be bringing in data collector information from the field, Google Earth maps. One of the things that as far as I know, an exclusive to Elevation Pro is we've made it possible to pull all of those documents and have them open simultaneously. And what that does for you is it gives you the high production because you can pick the document that has the information that you need as you build the takeoff. The other thing is it validates that you didn't leave anything out because as you start putting in data from one document, it overlays on all the other documents so you can quickly flip through them and go, oh yeah, everything's accounted for. So that translates into just production, but it also, because of the way that we've put it together, it translates to ease of use because you're not blindly aligning documents. The other thing is we have made the interface consistent from beginning to end so that when we teach you how to bring in a contour, you know how to bring in a subgrade, you know how to bring in a stripping region or a boundary or anything like that. Many other applications you'll see, hundreds of icons and you're like, what do these do? Not with Elevation.
So it seems like you've got some principles that kind of cut across the product. You think that that'd be a pretty common sense thing for other companies to consider as well, right?
Well, it is, but what happens oftentimes, and it happened to us in our previous product, you start out with this development platform, and as the industry evolves, you kind of just, I don't know, for lack of a better word, you Frankenstein it. You basically start tacking on all of these features, never once having considered if you started with a blank sheet of paper and did it from the beginning, you would accommodate all of that. And so I think that's one of the advantages of Elevation Pro is that we've been able to actually start fresh and do these things. And then as far as the other part of it is, I have to give a lot of credit to our customers. We still do all of our own technical support. We log all the calls. We grade the trouble spots. And so when we were designing the new product, we basically said, okay, based on the experience we've had from the previous product, what are the things, you know, companies tout their great tech support. And if you look at our reviews, you'll see we're fantastic. I mean, we have great grades on tech support, but I would counter that to say that the best tech support is when you don't need to call. The product is so intuitive that it just works. So, and of course, as a software development company, ironically, we can support people much better if they're not tripping on the easy to use things, the things that should be easy to use. So, there's a win. Our experience with the previous product really, really helped. And I think that, as you say, everybody tries to, says, oh, our product's easy to use, and they work around that with training, but there's certainly a lot to do with the design that makes things easier.
Yeah. Now, once you do the takeoff, the estimate, you get the project, how does Elevation Pro begin to, lower that administrative or managerial, burden on someone as they prepare to actually perform the work using machine control equipment?
So the interesting thing is that there's documentation what we call vector based. It's vector is just point of origin and a direction, and so typical vector files would be an AutoCAD file. It's just drawn with line work and math. If you looked under the hood of an AutoCAD file, it's basically full of math. And most PDFs these days are vector files. And ironically, when you create a PDF file, even though it's been shrunk to paper space, it maintains a high level of accuracy. And so if we do a takeoff from a vectorized PDF and or a CAD file, we maintain a high level of precision. The challenge, of course, is when you move it to the field, you have to actually have what they call localization. It's the ability to say, hey, this belongs here. So a PDF by itself isn't the greatest document to actually lay out in the field just because it does not have coordinate data that's actually super useful. So we typically for best practices to actually get the CAD file, but oftentimes our customers won't get a CAD file until after they are awarded the project. But if you've done your takeoff from vector-based data, you have a really accurate model there. You may need to enhance it, put some break lines in there, and maybe tune it up. In estimating, we sort of use the mindset of let's not let perfection be the enemy of really, really good. When you go to a model, it has to be perfection. I heard a TopCon dealer say something that stuck with me for over 20 years. He said, a good model has a valid elevation for every square inch of the job site. And so you have to actually go in there and look at your 3Ds and make sure everything, because you're, in essence, a dozer with a machine controller, motor grader, or whatever, is, suffers from the garbage in, garbage out, GIGO, mentality that whoever invented that term is so true. Your equipment all of a sudden is running to that. So good model is really critical. So I don't know, did I answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. So without Inside Elevation Pro, how are things going to be worse or harder, more arduous or riskier for these contractors who are, you're trying to get that model that is going to work for their machine control equipment?
So we go back to there are other ways to generate models. I mean, the engineering firms use AutoCAD, Civil 3D. There's a bunch of other products out there that allow you to build models. The key to generating a good model is to have visualization so that you can look at it at a glance and say, hey, that's correct. Not forget data. There's a lot of and again, we go back to the foundation of elevation and allowing multiple documents to be open at the same time. You can validate that all of the information is in there. We've created an easy path to actually get that information out to the equipment itself. And I think since you've already done a lot of work up until that particular point, somebody that sets up their job and is meticulous about it and basically uses vectors to build their takeoff, they've invested a bunch of time at that point. To throw that away to start over on the model would be just a waste of labor. So what we do is we typically teach the takeoff part of it first, And because every job, this takeoff is a numbers game. It's like your the jobs that you were awarded have to pay for the overhead of the jobs that you didn't get in the bidding. And so, but at the point where you're awarded the job, you can take that information and move it into the field if you've actually taken the time to keep the job set up correct and accurate.
So would contractors typically, many of them have to like, bring in outside consulting or engineering help to create these models?
There's a couple of different ways. There's a lot of model building companies, and for some of the smaller grading contractors out there that are, working really, really long weeks, it's like they hire these firms, and the challenge with them, and they make very good models. The people that have experience in them. The challenge is, of course, it's a third party dependency. All of a sudden, it's like, okay, I get a change to the job. It's like a revision, and how do I turn that around when I've got potentially millions of dollars of iron sitting there idling, waiting for the new file. So that's a frustration that they have. The other one is that they can be pricey. The neat thing on a lot of smaller commercial projects is the distance between a good takeoff and a good model is not there's not a huge lift to get from one to the other. So they've already done that work. Why not actually take on that responsibility themselves? For companies that don't have a surveying department, we do recommend that they have localization done by a surveying firm because that's the one place where there's a lot of risk.
So if you were to look at the different phases of a project life cycle from takeoff to estimating to doing the work, what are the different areas where folks are going to see ROI from Insight Elevation Pro? And we've talked before. I know what some of the cooler ones are. I want to hear you talk about them again.
Well, it starts out with efficiency. I mean, I can't stress enough that takeoff is overhead, and it's a bidding numbers game. In a good economy, we've got contractors that that the software use is actually minimized because they are so busy doing jobs, but most of these projects are lump sum, and the way that you actually minimize risk is to break a takeoff down to the point where you know what your numbers are. People that hold their thumb up and hope for success, basically, that's you're bidding against people that aren't doing that, and trust me, you're going to get burned eventually. So so we start out with the idea that it's a numbers game, and we save a ton of labor with our product. We have a construction industry filled with professionals that aren't CAD jockeys. They know construction really, really well. We can put them through a class very, very quickly. We have a series of training programs that we put people through and bring them up to speed very, very quickly, and then they hit the ground running. If there's any kind of turnover of estimators or something like that, we run classes every week. And since the software is easy to use, that's really a critical component to a sustainable company. There's turnover in personnel. You have somebody that actually has a level of expertise on a complicated piece of software, and all of a sudden they leave your company. It's like, where are you? You better have backup, or you better have an easy to use solution that you can get somebody up to speed really quickly. We have things like 3D Live that give you a visualization of your data input as you work, so you can just quickly see what you're doing. We have tools like our KMZ export, which allows you to export a cut and fill to your phone, so you can walk around the job site and see, and do it's not for layout, but it's really good for recon to go out there and walk the job site and predict potential problems that you may have, or share that with other contractors.
So when it comes to your customers, when they're still at that prospect stage and they're coming to you and saying, man, we've got problems, we want you to help with. What are the main problems that they're coming to you with that you're in a position to solve for them?
The biggest one I would say, if I was to, I mean, there's there's a lot of them, but if I was actually trying to put my finger on that, I think the biggest one comes in with, especially with the smaller contractors that are growing, it's time. Keep in mind, an estimator in this industry is going to be one of your top people at your company. They have to know everything you're capable of doing, know how to price jobs. So if they're not the owner, they're right up there, especially in the small to medium sized companies. They are pressed for time. So if we can actually come to them and say, hey, we can cut your time over a manual takeoff by over 10 times, and if they're using a competitor's application, we can cut it at least in half. Then there's the other component of it is the complexity of it. It's like, oftentimes what I described, we have we'll have a customer that reaches out to us and says, hey, we had so and so that was our estimator for years, and he's retiring, or he's, okay, let me show you our application, how simple it actually is to use, how we have training to get you up to speed. And by the way, that training is available as part of your subscription, so that, the best companies are what we call sustainable. Sustainability is just simply that there's somebody to plug in when somebody's, out on vacation, or, absent for any reason. And we give you the opportunity to do that.
So, Steve, you've taken me to school on this once again, and I really appreciate it. But for folks who are with us for the first time and don't, as often as I do, have the pleasure of your company, what three things you think they should kind of carry away from this video in their minds about Inside Elevation Pro?
Yeah, that we bring great value to the customer in terms of their ability to get takeoff done quickly, and move that out to machine control. That we have the training and technical support to actually make sure the customer is, always able to produce. And then of course the last one I would say is just simply the fact that, one of our company's core values is driven to improve. And there's a little update button that comes on the toolbar whenever there's an update, and our customers describe it as like Christmas morning. They're like, okay, what did I get? Because we are constantly listening to them and basically bringing improvements to our product on a daily, well, I shouldn't say daily basis, there's not an update every day, but we're working on it daily, and to bring that information to our customers, that technology.
Well, as folks are looking to make grade control and machine control a more central part of their business, this is the type of helper technology that's going to make it viable for more people. So great to talk with you again, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Charles.